My name is Nathan, and at 32 years old, I never expected to still feel like the forgotten son. When my brother Mason was coming home from his military deployment, I found out about his big welcome party through Facebook, not my own parents. "It's just a reunion," my dad said dismissively when I called to ask why I wasn't invited. So I booked a ski trip to Aspen instead. I had no idea that decision would completely change my relationship with my entire family. Before I tell you how this family drama exploded in my face, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt like the forgotten child in your family. Growing up in suburban Chicago with my parents, Walter and Patricia Thompson, was an exercise in feeling invisible. From my earliest memories, our family dynamic had been firmly established. Mason, my brother, 3 years older than me, was the golden child. He had it all: athletic talent, natural charisma, and most importantly, our parents' unwavering attention and praise. Mason started playing football in elementary school and immediately showed promise. Every weekend, my parents would drive him to games all over the state, cheering loudly from the sidelines, their faces glowing with pride. When he scored a touchdown, my dad would brag about it to everyone for weeks. Meanwhile, I was usually left with our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Halloway, who always smelled like mothballs and overcooked cabbage. It wasn't that I lacked accomplishments of my own. I consistently earned straight A's and won the regional science fair 3 years running with my programming projects. But my achievements were often met with casual acknowledgement at best. "That's nice, Nathan," my mom would say, before immediately shifting the conversation to Mason's latest football triumph. My 7th grade science fair win that qualified me for the state competition barely registered on my parents' radar because it fell on the same weekend as Mason's championship game. They attended his game, of course. My Aunt Linda took me to the science fair where I won 2nd place overall. My parents didn't even ask how it went when I returned home. Our younger sister Haley came along when I was 6. I had hoped having another sibling might balance things out, but Haley quickly became Mason's shadow. She adored him and, by extension, adopted our parents' perspective that Mason hung the moon. Family photos told the story plainly. Mason in the center, flanked by proud parents, and adoring sister with me, typically positioned off to the side, sometimes literally half out of frame. Birthday celebrations further highlighted the disparity. Mason's parties were elaborate affairs with dozens of friends, special cakes, and expensive gifts. My birthdays were typically acknowledged with a store-bought cake and a gift card. When I turned 16, I received a second-hand laptop, while just months earlier, Mason had gotten a car for his 19th birthday. After graduating high school, I chose to attend college in Colorado, partly for the excellent computer science program, but mostly for the distance it would provide from my family. Those 4 years gave me space to develop my identity outside of Mason's shadow. I made genuine friends who valued me for who I was, not who I wasn't. I discovered a passion for rock climbing and photography alongside my studies. After college, I secured a job as a software engineer in Denver and decided to stay there permanently. My visits home became less frequent, typically limited to major holidays, and even those left me feeling diminished. Conversations inevitably centered around Mason's accomplishments, with minimal interest in my life or career achievements. When Mason joined the military at 25, he ascended to an even higher status in our family hierarchy. He wasn't just the golden child anymore. He was now the family hero. My parents converted his old bedroom into a shrine of sorts, displaying his uniform medals and photos proudly. Meanwhile, my childhood bedroom had long since been transformed into a home gym that nobody used. Over the years, I worked hard to build my own life, finding worth and validation outside my family. I developed close friendships, advanced in my career, and created a comfortable home in Denver. I'd mostly come to terms with my family dynamic, or so I thought. But some wounds run deeper than we realize, waiting for the right moment to remind us they never fully healed. It was a random Tuesday evening when I was scrolling through Facebook and saw a post from my cousin Rebecca, so excited for Mason's big homecoming bash this weekend. The Thompson family really knows how to throw a party. I stared at my screen, confused. Mason was coming home. There was a party. Why hadn't anyone told me? I immediately texted my sister Haley, who responded with a vague, "Oh, I thought Mom would have mentioned it to you." The next morning I called my mom under the pretense of just checking in. After the usual pleasantries and her 5-minute monologue about her garden club drama, I casually asked, "So, is there anything exciting happening in the family?" There was an awkward pause before she answered, "Not much. Just the usual. Your father's back is acting up again." "Oh, and Mason will be visiting soon." "Really? When's he coming?" I pressed, giving her the opportunity to mention the party. "This weekend," she said, then quickly changed the subject to ask if I was still doing that computer thing at work. After ending the call, I sat at my kitchen table, a familiar, hollow feeling spreading through my chest. They were deliberately keeping me out of the loop. But why had I done something wrong at Christmas? Had Mason said something about me? The questions multiplied, and with them, my anxiety. I decided to call my dad directly. Unlike my mom, who danced around uncomfortable topics, my dad was bluntly straightforward sometimes, to the point of cruelty. "Dad, I heard Mason's coming home this weekend," I said after minimal small talk. "Yep," he confirmed. "I saw something on Facebook about a party." Another pause, longer this time. "It's just a reunion," he finally said, his tone dismissive. "Nothing you'd be interested in." "A reunion implies people have been apart," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm apart from Mason, too. Why wouldn't I be invited?" "Look, Nathan," my dad sighed as if I was being difficult. "It's mainly for the relatives who haven't seen him since he enlisted. You never come to family events anyway." "I come to the ones I'm invited to," I countered. "Well, it's all planned now. Maybe next time." And with that, he ended the call, claiming he had another incoming call that he needed to take. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. They hadn't just forgotten to invite me, they had deliberately excluded me. My curiosity got the better of me, and I called Rebecca, hoping she could shed some light on the situation. Rebecca had always been kind to me, one of the few relatives who seemed to see past the family narrative. "Oh, Nathan," she said, sounding genuinely surprised. "I assumed you'd be there. It's a huge event. Your mom's been planning it for weeks. They've rented out the community center, hired caterers, the works. There's going to be at least 50 people there." 50 people, I repeated numbly. "Yeah, the whole extended family, neighbors, Mason's old football buddies, even some of his military friends who live nearby. Your mom's been sending updates to the family group chat about decorations and food. You're not in that chat." I wasn't. Another exclusion I hadn't even known about. Rebecca must have sensed my distress because she quickly added, "I'm sure it was just an oversight, Nathan. You know how scattered Aunt Patricia gets when she's planning events." But we both knew it wasn't an oversight. My exclusion was too consistent to be accidental. That evening I called my parents' house, determined to confront them directly. My mom answered, and I could hear party planning chaos in the background. "Mom, why wasn't I invited to Mason's homecoming party?" I asked without preamble. The background noise suddenly diminished, as if she'd moved to another room. "Oh, Nathan, we didn't think you'd want to come all the way from Denver for just a small gathering. Rebecca tells me there are 50 people coming, and you've rented the community center." Silence. Then, "Well, it grew larger than we initially planned. So, now that it's a big event, were you planning to invite me?" "Honey, of course. You're welcome to come if you want to," she said, not actually answering my question. I heard my dad's voice in the background asking who she was talking to, then the muffled sound of her covering the phone and responding. A moment later, my dad's voice came on the line. "Nathan, what's the problem now?" he asked, exasperation evident in his tone. "The problem is that my entire family organized a massive welcome home party for my brother and deliberately didn't tell me about it," I said, my voice rising despite my attempts to stay calm. "Look, we just thought it would be better this way," he said. "You always make things uncomfortable with your attitude. You and Mason haven't been close in years. We didn't want any tension to ruin his special day." His words felt like a slap. "My attitude? What attitude?" "You know what I mean. The chip on your shoulder whenever Mason gets attention. The passive-aggressive comments. It's exhausting, Nathan." I was speechless. In their narrative, I wasn't just forgotten. I was the problem. Fine, I finally said. Enjoy your perfect family party with your perfect son. I won't ruin it with my presence. I hung up hands, shaking with anger and hurt. For a moment, I considered booking a flight to Chicago just to show up and force them to acknowledge me. But what would that accomplish? More tension, more pain, and ultimately more evidence that I didn't belong. Instead, I opened my laptop and searched for vacation rentals in Aspen. My friends Justin and Derek had been trying to get me to join them on a ski trip for months. Now seemed like the perfect time to finally say yes. I wouldn't sit at home feeling sorry for myself while my family celebrated without me. I would create my own joy, my own memories in the beautiful Colorado mountains with people who actually wanted me around. By midnight, I had booked a cabin, arranged for time off work, and packed my ski gear. As I fell asleep that night, I felt a strange mix of hurt and liberation. For the first time, I was choosing myself over the hope of family acceptance, and despite the pain, it felt like the right decision. The drive from Denver to Aspen was exactly what I needed. As the urban sprawl gave way to the majestic Rocky Mountains, I felt the knot in my chest begin to loosen. Justin and Derek kept the conversation light during the journey, sensing that I wasn't ready to dive into family drama just yet. "Dude, this cabin is going to blow your mind," Justin said as he navigated the winding mountain roads. 3 bedrooms, hot tub on the deck, and only a 5-minute walk to the gondola. "And wait until you see the slopes," Derek added from the back seat. "They got 8 inches of fresh powder yesterday. Perfect timing." By the time we pulled up to the cabin, the sun was setting behind the mountains, casting a golden glow over the snow-covered landscape. The cabin exceeded all expectations with its rustic, luxury vaulted ceilings with exposed wooden beams, a stone fireplace, and floor-to-ceiling windows, showcasing the mountain views. "This beats the hell out of a community center in Chicago," I muttered as I carried my bags to the largest bedroom, claiming it before the others could. Small victories. That evening, we grilled steaks on the deck and drank local craft beer by the fire. My phone buzzed several times with calls from my mom and sister, but I silenced it and tucked it away in my jacket pocket. Whatever guilt trip or justification they wanted to lay on me could wait. Tonight was about disconnecting from that toxicity. Our first day on the slopes was nothing short of therapeutic. There's something about hurtling down a mountain at high speed that makes family drama seem distant and insignificant. With each run, I felt more present, more alive, and less concerned with what was happening back in Chicago. During our lunch break at the mountain lodge, I checked my phone to find 6 missed calls and a dozen text messages from various family members. I skimmed them briefly, Mom asking if I was okay because I wasn't answering, Dad telling me I was being childish, Haley saying I was ruining Mason's homecoming by causing drama. I turned the phone off and ordered another beer. "Family still blowing up your phone?" Derek asked, catching my expression. "Yeah. Apparently I'm ruining the party by not being there even though they didn't want me there in the first place," I said, shaking my head at the irony. "Families are complicated," Justin said, uncharacteristically serious. "My parents didn't speak to me for 6 months when I dropped out of law school to open the rock climbing gym. Now they brag about their entrepreneur son to all their friends." "At least they came around," I said. "They did, but only after I stopped trying to please them and started living for myself. Once they saw I was happy and successful on my own terms, their perspective shifted." His words resonated with me. Maybe I had been giving my family too much power over my happiness, always hoping for an approval that never came. As we prepared for our afternoon session, I spotted a ski school group nearby. The instructor, a woman with auburn hair peeking out from under her helmet, was demonstrating proper turning technique to her students. Our eyes met briefly, and she smiled before returning her attention to her class. Something about that small interaction lingered with me as we headed back to the lifts. Later that afternoon, I found myself on a more challenging run than I'd anticipated. As I cautiously navigated the steep terrain, someone skillfully skied up beside me. "You're leaning too far back," said a voice I somehow knew would belong to the auburn-haired ski instructor. "Shift your weight forward over the middle of your skis." I adjusted my stance as suggested and immediately felt more control. "Thanks," I said. I think I was getting in my head about the steepness. "That's usually when form breaks down," she agreed. "I'm Allison, by the way." Nathan, are you done teaching for the day? Just finished my last class. Now I get to enjoy the mountain for myself. We ended up skiing several runs together, her expertise evident in the fluid way she navigated the terrain. She was easy to talk to, asking questions about my life in Denver, but not prying when I gave vague answers about my trip to Aspen being a last-minute decision. Back at the cabin that evening, my friends noticed my improved mood. Looks like someone had a good day, Derek teased as I recounted meeting Allison. She's just cool to talk to, I defended. And an amazing skier. And single, Justin prodded. I didn't ask. But you're going to see her again tomorrow, right? I shrugged but couldn't suppress a smile. Maybe. She mentioned she's usually at the North Facelift around noon. As we relaxed in the hot tub that night, steam rising around us in the cold mountain air, my phone started buzzing again from where I'd left it on a nearby chair. The screen lit up with a succession of incoming texts. Your family is persistent, I'll give them that, Derek observed. Maybe you should at least let them know you're alive, Justin suggested. They might be genuinely worried. Or they might be mad that I'm not sitting at home feeling sorry for myself while they have their perfect family party, I countered. Either way, a quick text would shut down the constant notifications. He had a point. I toweled off my hands and sent a brief message to my sister. I'm fine. On a ski trip with friends. We'll talk later. Almost immediately, my phone rang. Haley. I should take this, I said, stepping inside the cabin for privacy. Where are you? Haley demanded when I answered. Mom and Dad are freaking out. I told you I'm in Aspen. Skiing. Having a great time, thanks for asking. While your family is celebrating Mason's return, that's really selfish, Nathan. I took a deep breath. Selfish I wasn't invited, Haley. How is it selfish to make other plans when I'm explicitly excluded? You weren't excluded, she insisted. You're just being dramatic as usual. Dad literally told me they didn't want me there because I would ruin Mason's special day with my attitude. Those were his exact words. There was a pause. Well, you do get weird whenever Mason gets attention. I get weird because no one in this family has ever given a damn about my life or accomplishments. Do you even know what I do for work, Haley? Have you ever asked, do Mom and Dad ever mention me when I'm not around? Or is it all Mason all the time? That's not fair, isn't it? When was the last time anyone in the family called just to check on me, not to tell me about something amazing Mason did? Her silence was answer enough. Look, I said, softening my tone. I'm not trying to make this about me. I genuinely hope Mason has a great homecoming. But I'm not going to pretend it doesn't hurt to be deliberately left out, and I'm not going to apologize for finding my own happiness this weekend instead. Fine, she said finally. I'll tell them you're okay. After hanging up, I rejoined my friends in the hot tub, bringing a fresh round of beers. Everything okay? Justin asked. Not really, I admitted. But it's better than it would have been if I'd stayed home this weekend. To choosing your own happiness, Derek said, raising his bottle. We clinked bottles in agreement, and as I looked up at the star-filled sky above the mountains, I felt something shift inside me. For the first time, I was putting myself first, and despite the lingering pain of rejection, it felt right. Our third day in Aspen dawned clear and cold, with fresh snow sparkling in the morning sunlight. By now, I had established a rhythm: wake early, eat a hearty breakfast, and hit the slopes before the crowds arrived. The physical exertion and mountain air had worked wonders on my mental state, pushing thoughts of my family's rejection to the background. Around noon, I met Allison at the North Facelift as planned. She was even more engaging than I remembered, sharing stories of the celebrities she'd taught to ski and the worst wipeouts she'd witnessed. We grabbed lunch at a mountainside cafe, and I found myself opening up about my career in software engineering and my passion for photography. You should show me some of your photos sometime, she said, her green eyes crinkling at the corners when she smiled. Maybe I will, I replied, feeling a connection that went beyond casual conversation. After lunch, we tackled some of the more challenging terrain on the mountain, and I surprised myself by keeping up with her expert skills. There was something liberating about focusing solely on the present moment, on the feel of my skis cutting through powder and the rush of cold air against my face. By late afternoon, exhausted but exhilarated, we parted ways with plans to meet again the following day. As I returned my rental gear and headed back to the cabin, I finally turned my phone back on, curious whether my conversation with Haley had stemmed the tide of messages. Instead, I found my phone immediately buzzing with notification after notification, dozens of missed calls, voicemails, and text messages from not just my immediate family, but aunts, uncles, and cousins as well. Something was clearly wrong. I stopped in the middle of the rental shop, heart pounding, as I played the most recent voicemail from Haley. "Nathan, please call me back immediately," her voice was shaking. "Mason didn't show up to his party. No one knows where he is. Mom is hysterical and Dad is blaming you somehow. They think you might know where he is. Please just call me back." I quickly scrolled through the text, trying to piece together what had happened. "From Mom yesterday, 4:15 p.m. Nathan, please call us. It's important." From Dad yesterday, 6:30 p.m. Your brother isn't answering his phone. Call home now. From Haley. Yesterday, 7:45 p.m. Where are you? Everyone is here, but Mason never showed up. From Aunt Linda. Yesterday, 8:20 p.m. Your mother is worried sick. Please call if you know anything about Mason's whereabouts. From Mom today, 9:10 a.m. Nathan Thomas Thompson. I know you and Mason planned this to hurt us. Call me back this instant. From Cousin Rebecca today, 10:30 a.m. Hey, your parents are telling everyone you somehow convinced Mason to skip his own party. What's going on? Also, I think Mason was trying to reach you before all this happened. He asked me for your email last week. That last message gave me pause. Mason had asked for my email. We hadn't communicated directly in over a year, with family news usually filtered through our parents or sister. Hands shaking slightly, I called Haley back. Finally, she answered on the first ring. Where have you been? Skiing, like I told you. What's happening with Mason? He never showed up yesterday. The party was supposed to start at 3, and by 5, Mom was calling everyone she could think of. No one's heard from him. His phone goes straight to voicemail. And Dad thinks I had something to do with this, I asked, disbelief clear in my voice. He says it's too coincidental that you suddenly take off on a ski trip the same weekend Mason disappears. That's ridiculous. I took off because I wasn't welcome at the party, which everyone seems to have conveniently forgotten. Whatever, Nathan. Do you know where he is or not? I have no idea. We haven't spoken in months. I said, then remembered Rebecca's text. But Rebecca mentioned he asked for my email recently. Yeah, Mom found out about that and is convinced you two cooked up some scheme to ruin the party. The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed. That's insane. I haven't received any emails from Mason. After promising to check my email thoroughly and let her know if I heard anything, I hung up and immediately opened my email app. Nothing in my inbox from Mason, but on a hunch I checked my spam folder. There it was, an email from an unfamiliar address sent 3 days ago with the subject line, "Need to talk, bro." I opened it, heart racing. Nathan, I know we haven't really talked in ages, and that's mostly on me. I'm back stateside now, but not coming straight to Chicago. There's a lot I need to figure out, including how to deal with Mom and Dad. My time away gave me perspective on a lot of things, especially how they've treated you all these years. I just found out about this big party they're throwing, and you weren't on the guest list. That's messed up, and I'm not okay with it. I'd like to talk before I head to Chicago, maybe clear the air between us. I've got your number, but thought email might be better for this first reach out. Let me know if you're open to talking. Mason. I read the email twice, trying to process its implications. Mason had recognized our parents' toxic behavior. He was upset about my exclusion from the party. This wasn't at all what I had expected. I quickly checked my missed calls and found several from an unknown number that must have been Mason trying to reach me. Before I could decide my next move, a new text came in from Rebecca. Hey, just FYI. I didn't tell your parents about Mason asking for your email. He specifically asked me not to mention it to them. I only brought it up now because things are so chaotic. Hope that helps. Pieces were starting to fall into place. Mason had reached out to me privately, deliberately keeping our parents out of the loop. When I didn't respond because the email went to spam, he must have made a decision about the party on his own. Back at the cabin, I found Justin and Derek preparing dinner, completely unaware of the family drama unfolding. "Guys, I need to make some calls," I said, heading straight to my bedroom. I tried the unknown number that had called me several times. It went to voicemail after 4 rings. "Mason, it's Nathan. I just saw your email. It went to my spam folder. Call me back when you get this. I'm in Aspen on a ski trip, but we definitely need to talk." Next, I called Rebecca, hoping for more insight. "Nathan, thank God," she answered. "Your parents are on a rampage." "What exactly happened at the party?" I asked. It was bizarre. Everyone was there. The food was laid out, decorations everywhere. Your mom kept checking her watch and calling Mason, getting more frantic by the hour. Around 5:30, she announced that the party would continue, and Mason would join when he could. By 7, people started leaving. Your dad was telling everyone, "You must have convinced Mason to bail." "That's completely untrue," I insisted. "I know that," Rebecca said gently. "Look, Mason and I talked last week. He was concerned about the family dynamic. He mentioned feeling like he was seeing things clearly for the first time, especially regarding how they treat you. He said something similar in his email," I admitted. "Did he mention where he was?" "No, just that he wasn't coming straight to Chicago." Nathan, Rebecca hesitated. "I think you should know that when I saw Mason last week, he was different. More serious, more thoughtful. Whatever happened during his deployment, it changed him. And one of the things he seemed most concerned about was reconnecting with you." As we ended the call, my phone buzzed with an incoming text from the unknown number. "Just saw your voicemail. It's Mason. Can we talk now?" With shaking fingers, I dialed the number. Nathan Mason's voice sounded deeper than I remembered, more measured. "Yeah, it's me," I replied suddenly, unsure what to say to the brother I'd grown so distant from. "Where are you?" "Everyone's freaking out." "I'm in Boulder," he said, surprising me. "Been here for 3 days. Boulder. That's like a 3-hour drive from me right now. I'm in Aspen." "I know. Rebecca told me you went skiing after." He paused. After finding out about the party situation, there was an awkward silence as years of unspoken tension hung between us. "Did you skip the party because of me?" I finally asked. Mason sighed heavily. "Not exactly because of you, but because of how they treated you. When I found out they deliberately didn't invite you, something just snapped. I couldn't go through with it, couldn't stand there smiling while they acted like our perfect family was complete without you." His words hit me with unexpected force. For so long, I'd seen Mason as complicit in my exclusion, even benefiting from it. The idea that he had taken a stand on my behalf was difficult to process. "I don't understand," I admitted. "When did you start caring about how they treat me?" "Honestly, it started in Afghanistan," he said. "I had a lot of time to think out there. A lot of time to remember things from our childhood that I just accepted at the time. Like your 12th birthday when Dad forgot to pick you up from your friend's house because he was watching my football game. Or the time you won that big science competition, and Mom just put the certificate in a drawer while my trophies went in the display case. I remembered both incidents vividly, but was shocked that Mason did too. The thing is," he continued, "I never questioned any of it growing up. I just accepted their narrative that I was special and you were. I don't know, less important somehow. But the guys in my unit, we talk about everything during those long nights on patrol. When I described our family dynamic, my buddy Carlos called it straight-up toxic favoritism. He said his parents did the same thing to his younger sister, and now she won't speak to any of them." "That hit me hard," Mason admitted. "The idea that someday you might just cut all contact because of how they treated you, how I participated in it. And I realized I didn't want that. You're my brother, Nathan. My only brother." I sat down on the edge of the bed, emotional in a way I hadn't expected. "I almost did cut contact," I confessed. "After the Christmas incident last year." "What Christmas incident?" "Mom accidentally gave you my gift and me nothing. Remember, she played it off as a mix-up, but I saw the gift tags. Mine had been removed." Jesus, Mason breathed. "I didn't realize. There's so much I missed or ignored." "It's not entirely your fault," I said. surprising myself with the admission. You were a kid too. We both grew up in the dynamic they created. But I perpetuated it, he insisted. I accepted the special treatment, the extra attention. I let them make me the golden child and never questioned why they treated you differently. There was pain in his voice, genuine remorse that caught me off guard. So what now, I asked. Mom and Dad are telling everyone I somehow manipulated you into skipping the party. Mason let out a bitter laugh. Of course they are. They can't accept that their perfect son might make decisions they don't approve of. It's easier to blame you than acknowledge I might have legitimate issues with how they behave. What are you going to do? I'm not sure yet, he admitted. I need to face them eventually, but I'm not ready. I keep thinking about all the things I should say, all the patterns I want to break, but when I imagine actually confronting them, I freeze up. I understood that feeling all too well. Yeah, they have a way of making you doubt your own perceptions. Exactly. Mason's voice grew animated. Like you start off completely certain you're right to be upset and somehow 20 minutes later you're apologizing to them for having feelings. We both laughed, a moment of unexpected connection over our shared experience. So you're in Aspen? Mason asked. With friends? Yeah, 2 guys from Denver. We've got a cabin until Monday. There was a pause before Mason said, Would it be weird if I drove out there? Not to intrude on your trip, but maybe we could grab dinner or something. Start figuring out what a real brotherhood might look like without Mom and Dad's influence. The suggestion took me by surprise, but not in a bad way. Actually, that would be great. We've got an extra bedroom in the cabin if you want to stay. My friends wouldn't mind. Really? The hope in his voice was palpable. You'd be okay with that after everything? I think so, I said, realizing I meant it. It sounds like we both have a lot to process about our family, and maybe doing that together makes sense. We made arrangements for Mason to drive to Aspen the next day. After hanging up, I sat for a long time trying to absorb the monumental shift that had just occurred. My brother, who I'd spent a lifetime feeling secondary to, had not only recognized the toxic family pattern, but had taken a dramatic stand against it. When I finally emerged from my room, Justin and Derek were plating the dinner they'd prepared. Everything okay? Justin asked, noting my dazed expression. My brother's coming to Aspen tomorrow, I said. Is it cool if he stays in the extra room? They exchanged surprised glances. The brother from the party you weren't invited to, Derek clarified. Yeah. Turns out he skipped his own welcome home party because he was upset about me being excluded. We just had probably the most honest conversation of our entire lives. Wow, Justin said, passing me a plate. That's unexpected. Tell me about it, I agreed. I've spent my whole life thinking he was as bad as my parents, benefiting from being the favorite. Turns out he's been doing some serious reflection during his deployment, and he's not okay with how they treat me. Family reckonings are intense, Derek said. When I finally confronted my dad about his drinking, it changed everything. Not instantly, and not always easily, but it was the beginning of something honest. As we ate, I filled them in on the details of my conversation with Mason, still processing it myself. The anger and hurt I'd carried for so long hadn't disappeared, but it had shifted somehow, making space for something new. Not forgiveness exactly, not yet, but perhaps the possibility of understanding. Later that night, I received a text from Allison, still on for skiing tomorrow. I replied, Absolutely, but my brother's coming to town. Mind if he joins us in the afternoon? Her response came quickly. The more the merrier. Can't wait to meet him. As I got ready for bed, I realized I was actually looking forward to introducing Mason to my new friends, to showing him the life I'd built outside our family's restrictive roles. For the first time in my adult life, I was considering the possibility that Mason might become a true ally rather than a reminder of my second-class status in the family hierarchy. I also realized I hadn't responded to any of my parents' frantic messages. After consideration, I sent a brief text to my mother. I've spoken with Mason. He's safe and has his reasons for missing the party. This isn't about you or me. It's about patterns that need to change. I turned my phone off after that, not ready to deal with the inevitable backlash. Tomorrow would be about reconnecting with my brother on new terms, not managing our parents' drama. The rest could wait. I spotted Mason immediately when he pulled into the cabin's driveway the next afternoon. Even from a distance, I could see the changes in him. His military service had hardened his physique, but there was something else too, a seriousness in his posture that hadn't been there before. We stood awkwardly for a moment before he stepped forward and pulled me into a tight hug. "It's good to see you, Nathan," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You too," I replied, surprised by how much I meant it. Inside, I introduced Mason to Justin and Derek, who welcomed him warmly despite knowing the complicated backstory. We spent an hour catching up over coffee, the conversation flowing more easily than I had anticipated. "So, 3 years in Afghanistan," Justin said. "That must have been intense." "It changes your perspective," Mason nodded. "Makes you realize what actually matters." "Like family?" Derek asked. "Real family," Mason clarified. "The kind that has your back no matter what. I found that with my unit overseas. Made me realize what was missing back home." His eyes met mine briefly, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between us. After lunch, we met Allison at the base of the mountain for an afternoon of skiing. She and Mason hit it off immediately, sharing stories of adrenaline junkie experiences. He'd taken up skydiving in the military while she'd been a competitive freestyle skier before becoming an instructor. As we rode the lift together, Mason nudged my shoulder. "She's into you, you know." "What?" "No," I protested automatically. "Dude, I may have been oblivious about a lot of things, but I can tell when a woman is interested in my brother. She keeps finding reasons to touch your arm." I felt my face warm, and not from the cold mountain air. "We're just skiing together." "Uh-huh," he smirked, and for a moment it felt like we were normal brothers without the weight of our complicated history. The afternoon on the slopes was exactly what we needed, physical activity providing a natural backdrop for conversation. Between runs, Mason opened up more about his time in the military and the perspective it had given him. "There was this guy in my unit, Rodriguez," he told me as we waited in the lift line. "Smartest person I've ever met. Could fix anything. Spoke 4 languages. But his family back home treated him like he was nothing because he didn't become a doctor like his dad wanted." Sound familiar? "A bit," I admitted. Watching him deal with that, hearing the phone calls where his accomplishments were dismissed. It was like seeing our family dynamic from the outside. And it looked terrible, Nathan. Really terrible. Back at the cabin that evening, the 4 of us prepared dinner together while Allison joined us for drinks. The conversation flowed easily, touching on everything from favorite movies to career aspirations. For once, I didn't feel like I was in Mason's shadow. We were just 2 brothers with different strengths and experiences. After dinner, as we relaxed by the fire with drinks, Mason's phone rang. He checked the screen and grimaced. "It's Dad." The light-hearted atmosphere immediately tensed. Mason looked at me uncertainly. "You should answer it," I said. "They're probably still worried." Mason nodded and stepped outside with the phone. Through the window, I could see his expression growing increasingly frustrated as he paced in the snow. When he came back inside 10 minutes later, his jaw was tight. "They want to talk to both of us. Right now." "Both of us," I repeated. "Dad insisted I put you on the phone. I told him you were right here with me in Aspen." He freaked out, said we'd planned this whole thing to embarrass them. "That's ridiculous," I said, though the accusation was exactly what I'd expected. "I know. But maybe we should just get this over with. Clear the air." I looked around at my friends and Allison, uncomfortable having this family drama play out in front of them. "We can make ourselves scarce," Justin offered, reading my discomfort. "There's a bar in town we've been wanting to check out." "No, stay," Mason said. "If we're going to have this conversation, maybe it's better to have witnesses, people who can see us as we really are, not how our parents paint us." Something about his reasoning resonated with me. Too many family confrontations had happened behind closed doors, allowing my parents to rewrite the narrative afterward. "Okay," I agreed, taking out my phone. "Let's do this." I put the call on speaker so everyone could hear both sides of the conversation. "Nathan, Mason." My mother's voice came through tense and tearful. "Are you both there?" "We're here, Mom," Mason confirmed. "You're on speaker." "What in God's name do you 2 think you're doing?" My father's voice boomed. Do you have any idea what you've put your mother through? The humiliation of 50 people showing up for a party, and the guest of honor nowhere to be found. I'm sorry if Mom was embarrassed, Mason said calmly. But I made a decision based on principles not to cause harm. Principles, Dad scoffed. What principles justify standing up your entire family? The principle that all family members should be treated with equal respect, Mason replied. When I found out Nathan was deliberately excluded from my welcome home party, I couldn't in good conscience attend. There was a pause before my mother said Nathan wasn't excluded. He was welcome to come. That's not true, I interjected. Dad specifically told me it would be better if I didn't attend, because I might ruin Mason's special day with my attitude. I never said that, Dad protested. You did, I insisted. Those were your exact words. Well, if I did, it was only because you always make everything about you, Dad countered. You've been jealous of your brother your entire life. I saw Mason's expression harden. Stop it, Dad. That's exactly the problem. You've always pitted us against each other, made Nathan feel less than, and elevated me as the golden child. It was toxic when we were kids, and it's toxic now. How dare you, Mom gasped. After everything we've done for both of you. What exactly have you done for Nathan? Mason challenged. When's the last time you called just to check on him? Not to compare him to me, or make him feel inadequate. The silence that followed was telling. This is absurd, Dad finally said. We've always treated you both equally. I couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. Dad, that's demonstrably false. My entire childhood is evidence to the contrary. The forgotten birthdays, the missed achievements, the constant comparisons. You're exaggerating, Mom insisted. He's not, Mason said firmly. I saw it too. I just benefited from it, so I didn't question it. But I'm questioning it now, and I'm not coming home until you acknowledge the pattern and commit to changing it. So this is some kind of ultimatum. Dad's voice rose. You two are ganging up on us now. It's not ganging up to ask for basic respect and acknowledgement, I said. We're adults trying to establish healthy boundaries with our parents. Boundaries, Mom. Sounded confused by the term. What are you talking about? We're talking about being treated as individuals with our own value, Mason explained, not as extensions of your expectations or ego. Nathan deserves the same recognition and love that I've received. The fact that you can't even acknowledge the disparity shows how deep this problem goes. This is ridiculous, Dad snapped. You've turned your brother against us, Nathan. I hope you're satisfied. I haven't turned anyone against you, I said, working to keep my voice steady. Mason came to his own conclusions. Maybe instead of blaming me, you should consider why both your sons are expressing the same concerns. There was a long pause before my mother spoke again, her voice smaller. What exactly do you want from us? Mason and I exchanged glances. We hadn't discussed specific demands. For starters, I said carefully acknowledgement that there has been a pattern of favoritism that hurt me, and a commitment to change that pattern going forward, Mason added. To treat Nathan with the same enthusiasm and interest you've always shown me. And respect for our autonomy, I continued, gaining confidence. No more manipulation or guilt trips when we make choices you don't agree with. Another silence stretched out. I could almost picture my parents' nonverbal communication, the looks they'd be exchanging. We need time to process this, my father finally said, his voice tight but less aggressive. You've blindsided us with these accusations. They're not accusations, they're lived experiences, Mason corrected. Whatever you want to call them, Dad said dismissively. We need to think about all this. Fine, I agreed. Take all the time you need. We're staying in Aspen until Monday, then Mason's coming back to Denver with me for a few days. But what about the family, Mom asked, her voice small. Everyone wants to see Mason. They can see me when I'm ready, Mason said firmly. On terms that respect both me and Nathan as equal members of this family. After a few more tense exchanges, we ended the call. The cabin was silent for a moment, before Derek let out a low whistle. That was intense, he said, but you guys handled it like champions. Seriously, Justin agreed. That was some impressively united brotherhood right there. Allison, who had been quietly supportive throughout, touched my arm gently. "Are you okay?" "I think so," I said, somewhat surprised to find it was true. That might have been the most honest conversation I've ever had with my parents. Same. Mason nodded, looking drained but relieved. "It's out there now. No taking it back." "What do you think they'll do?" Allison asked. Mason shrugged. "Hard to say. They might dig in their heels, or they might actually reflect. Either way, something's changed. We're not playing by their rules anymore." That night, Mason and I stayed up late after the others had gone to bed, filling in the gaps of the past 3 years. He shared stories from his deployment, not just the sanitized versions he'd sent in emails home, but the real experiences that had shaped his new perspective. I told him about my life in Denver, my career achievements, and the independence I'd built away from our family's shadow. "I'm sorry," he said at one point, the words hanging in the dim light of the dying fire. "I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening sooner. That I participated in it. You were a kid too," I reminded him. "And later you were just playing the role they assigned you, same as me. Still, I should have been a better brother." "You're being one now," I said. "That counts for something." For the first time in my adult life, I felt a genuine connection with my brother, one built on mutual respect rather than competition or resentment. Whatever happened with our parents, this newfound brotherhood felt like a victory in itself. The final day of our Aspen trip dawned bright and clear, perfect conditions for our last ski session. Mason and I hit the slopes early, joined later by Allison, who had adjusted her teaching schedule to spend more time with us. There was a lightness between us now, the heavy conversation with our parents having cleared the air in unexpected ways. "Race you to the bottom," Mason challenged as we exited the lift at the summit. "You're on," I grinned, the competitive spirit between us now playful rather than loaded. We shot down the mountain side by side, weaving through other skiers, each pushing the other to go faster, take sharper turns. I edged ahead near the bottom, crossing our imaginary finish line seconds before him. "Damn, little brother's got skills," Mason laughed, spraying snow as he came to a stop beside me. "Software engineers can be athletic too." I shot back, enjoying the easy banter that would have been unimaginable a week ago. Later, over hot chocolate at the lodge, Allison and I exchanged phone numbers with promises to meet up in Denver soon. The connection between us had grown steadily stronger throughout the weekend, evolving from casual skiing companion to something with definite potential. "She's great," Mason commented after she'd left to teach her afternoon class. "Don't mess that up." "I'll try not to," I promised. As we packed up the cabin the next morning, I reflected on how differently this weekend had turned out from what I'd expected. I'd come to Aspen to escape family rejection, only to find a deeper, more authentic family connection than I'd ever experienced before. "What's the plan now?" Justin asked as we loaded our gear into the cars. "Mason's coming back to Denver with me for a few days," I explained. "We're going to meet with our parents when they come to town on Thursday." "Good luck with that," Derek said, giving us both supportive claps on the shoulder. "Remember, united front." The drive back to Denver gave Mason and me more time to strategize about the upcoming meeting with our parents. We decided on a neutral location, a restaurant downtown, to avoid the power dynamics that might come into play in a more private setting. "We need to be clear about what we want going forward," Mason said as we navigated the mountain roads, "not just what's been wrong in the past." "Agreed," I nodded. "And we need to be prepared for them to get defensive or try to split us against each other again." "Not happening," Mason said firmly. "Not anymore." The next few days in Denver were a revelation. Mason stayed in my spare bedroom, and we fell into an easy rhythm of work and leisure. I showed him around my neighborhood, introduced him to my local friends, and gave him a tour of my office. He seemed genuinely interested in my work, asking thoughtful questions about my current projects. In turn, he shared more about his military experience and his uncertainty about what came next. His enlistment was technically complete, but he was considering re-upping for another term. "I'm good at it," he explained as we cooked dinner in my kitchen. "And there's something about the structure, the clear purpose that works for me. But part of me wants to try something new too." "You've got time to figure it out," I assured him. "You can stay here as long as you need to." The offer came naturally without the resentment or competition that would have colored it in the past. For the first time, I felt like the supportive brother I'd always wanted to be but couldn't while trapped in our family's toxic dynamic. Thursday arrived too quickly. We met our parents at the restaurant, a neutral space where public surroundings would hopefully prevent any major scenes. They looked smaller, somehow less imposing than they had in my mind. Boy's mom greeted us, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The term boys grated on me slightly, a subtle infantilization that I might not have noticed before. Mom, Dad, Mason nodded, his posture straight, almost military in its formality. The initial conversation was strained, focusing on safe topics like the weather and the restaurant's menu. But once our orders were placed, the real discussion began. "We've been thinking about what you both said." Dad started, his tone carefully measured. "And while we don't agree with everything, we can acknowledge that perhaps there have been some imbalances in how we've approached things." It wasn't a full admission, but it was more than I'd expected. "What specifically do you see as imbalanced?" Mason pressed, not letting them off with vague acknowledgments. Dad looked uncomfortable. "Well, I suppose we've been more vocal about celebrating Mason's achievements over the years." And I prompted, "And perhaps we haven't shown the same interest in your career, Nathan." Mom added reluctantly, "Though in our defense, we don't really understand what you do." "You've never tried to understand," I pointed out. "You've never asked questions or shown interest when I've tried to explain." They exchanged glances, and I could see this was hitting home in a way my previous attempts to communicate had not. Something about having Mason there validating my perspective made it impossible for them to dismiss. "You're right," Mom finally admitted. "We should have made more effort." The conversation continued, sometimes tense, occasionally veering into defensiveness, but always pulling back to the core issues. We discussed specific incidents from our childhood patterns that had persisted into adulthood and the changes we needed to see going forward. "We just want to be treated with equal respect and interest," Mason summarized. "Both of us as the individuals, we are not as extensions of your expectations." "We can try," Dad said, looking genuinely thoughtful for perhaps the first time in my memory. "We're not perfect and old habits die hard, but we can try." It wasn't a complete resolution, more like the beginning of a process. But as we parted ways at the end of the meal with tentative plans for a family dinner the following week, I felt cautiously hopeful. Not that everything would magically change overnight, but that the possibility for change existed. "That went better than I expected," Mason commented as we walked back to my apartment. "Having you there made all the difference," I admitted. "They couldn't gaslight me about my experiences when you were confirming them." "Well, get used to it," he said, throwing an arm around my shoulders. "The Thompson brothers are a united front from now on." 3 months later, much had changed. Mason had decided not to re-enlist, instead using his GI Bill to enroll in engineering courses at the University of Colorado, Denver. He'd found his own apartment not far from mine, and we met regularly for dinner or weekend activities. Our relationship with our parents was evolving slowly. There were still missteps and moments of frustration, but there was also visible effort on their part. They'd visited my office, asked questions about my work, and even framed a photo of me receiving an industry award, placing it prominently in their living room alongside Mason's military photos. The most significant change, however, was in how I viewed myself. No longer defined by my position as the less favored son, I was discovering who Nathan Thompson really was when not constrained by family dynamics. My confidence spilled over into other areas of my life, including my relationship with Allison, which had blossomed into something genuine and promising. One evening, as Allison and I prepared dinner in my apartment, Mason stopped by unexpectedly. "I've got news," he announced, a grin spreading across his face. "I've been offered an internship with that renewable energy company I told you about." "That's fantastic," I exclaimed, genuinely thrilled for him. "When do you start?" "Next month. It's part-time so I can continue classes." As we celebrated his news, I realized how profoundly things had shifted. Here I was cheering my brother's success without a hint of the jealousy or resentment that would have colored such a moment in the past. And he in turn had called me first with his news, not our parents, a sign of the priority our relationship now held for him. Later, after Allison had gone home and Mason and I were finishing the last of the wine, he turned serious. "You know what I realized recently," he said. "All those years I wasn't really happy either." "What do you mean?" "Being the golden child came with its own prison," he explained. "The constant pressure to be perfect, to fulfill their expectations. I was never allowed to fail or show weakness. It was exhausting." I'd never considered this perspective before, that Mason's position in the family hierarchy had its own constraints and difficulties. "I guess we were both trapped in different ways," I acknowledged. "And now we're both free," he said, raising his glass. "To writing our own stories." I clinked my glass against his. "To brotherhood, on our own terms." As I reflect on the journey from that painful moment of exclusion to where I am now, I'm struck by how often family healing begins with the very wounds we most want to avoid. Had I been invited to that welcome home party, Mason and I might have continued in our prescribed roles indefinitely, never discovering the authentic connection we now share. Sometimes the most painful rejections lead us exactly where we need to go. Not because the pain itself is valuable, but because it forces us to chart new paths. In choosing myself that weekend, booking that ski trip, instead of wallowing in exclusion, I inadvertently created the space for something better to emerge. The family we were born into gave us our beginning, but it doesn't have to dictate our entire story. The family we choose and the boundaries we establish as adults can rewrite that narrative, creating connections based on mutual respect rather than obligatory roles. If you've ever felt like the forgotten child, the family disappointment, or trapped in a role that doesn't reflect who you truly are, know that it's never too late to challenge those dynamics. It takes courage, clarity, and often the support of others who see you clearly, but a new story is always possible. What family dynamics have you had to overcome in your own life? Leave a comment below and let me know. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Your support means everything as I continue sharing these personal journeys. Remember, the family roles we're assigned don't have to be permanent, and sometimes the most powerful act is simply choosing yourself.